There's a real gap between a place that's dangerous and a place that's ungovernable. You need to feel that difference in your bones before the power ever cuts out. Dangerous just means you could get hurt. That's it. Ungovernable is a whole other animal. Ungovernable means nobody is left who can make anyone face consequences. No system holds people back anymore. No rules, no cops, no courts, nothing. And there's no believable route back to order on any clock that helps you stay breathing. So when I say certain regions flip to ungovernable inside 30 days of a real collapse, forget politics. This has nothing to do with left or right. This is about water flow, calorie counts, and the hidden machinery that stops human beings from murdering each other over the last cup of drinkable water. 6 regions in this country are balanced on a razor. And honestly, the math behind their unraveling is already locked in. It's written. Most folks living in those places have no clue they're standing in the kill zone. They think they're safe. They're not. Let's start with the Southwest Corridor. That's the sprawl running from Las Vegas down through Phoenix and into Southern California. It's a concrete shrine to human ego, and it's got a death sentence baked right into its foundation. Here's the ugly part. It's a desert propping up 20 million people who have no natural business being there. Every single soul in Phoenix and Vegas stays alive because of the Colorado River and a power grid that literally shoves water uphill for hundreds of miles. Kill the grid and 2 things slam into a wall at the exact same second. Physics and the human body. There's no cushion between them. Phoenix in July hits 115 degrees easy. Sit still in that heat with no air conditioning and your body starts breaking down inside 4 hours. Heat exhaustion first, then heat stroke comes knocking right behind it. Your core temperature climbs past 104. At that point, your brain is basically cooking inside your own skull. And here's the thing people get wrong. By day 3, folks aren't dropping from thirst. They're dying of hyperthermia. In their own living rooms. On their own couches. Push to day 8 and picture a school teacher in Tempe standing by her backyard pool. She's running numbers no person should ever have to run. She's got maybe 3,000 gallons of pool water, full of chemicals. She knows every neighbor by name. She taught their kids. She ate burgers at their cookouts. And now she's calculating which ones she can share with and which one she's going to have to point a gun at. Because the second anyone learns she's got water, they are all coming for it. She understands something cold. Anyone she turns away today comes back tomorrow. And tomorrow they won't be asking politely. That's not society falling apart. That's just physics doing what physics does. The Sonoran Desert can carry maybe 50,000 needs to farm some people if you manage water carefully. Right now it holds around 5 million. When a gap that huge snaps back to reality, it does not happen gently. It happens fast and it happens ugly. And here's a point worth adding. The suburbs make it worse, not better. All those identical houses with no wells, no rainwater tanks, no shade trees. Everyone depending on the exact same dead pipe. When the tap goes dry, it goes dry for a whole zip code at once. There's also the medication angle nobody talks about. Half of Phoenix runs on prescriptions that need refrigeration or regular pharmacy refills. Insulin, heart meds, dialysis. The grid dies, and those people are on a countdown clock measured in days. And don't forget the roads out. Everyone assumes they'll just drive to somewhere cooler. But there are only a few highways leaving the metro. The moment panic hits, those fill up. And a car stuck in desert gridlock with no AC becomes an oven on wheels. One more thing. Vegas has an added twist. It's a tourist city, so on any given day there are hundreds of thousands of visitors with no local routes, no supplies, and no idea where anything is. When the casinos go dark, those crowds have nowhere to go and no plan at all. South Florida. South Florida takes a different route to killing you. It uses geography before anyone even throws a punch. Miami down through the Keys is a slab of limestone barely poking above the ocean, tied to the mainland by highways that squeeze through narrow choke points. When it all falls apart, millions try to run north at once, and the I-95 turns into a parking lot almost instantly. Gas stations need electricity to pump fuel. Generators run dry inside a couple of days. Nothing moves. By day 6, that highway is a 70-mile boneyard of dead cars. And the people who figured they could just walk out are learning something brutal. The human body can't cover that distance in tropical heat with no infrastructure, no water, no shade. They cook on the asphalt. But here's the real trap, and it's a nasty one. Around day 12, thousands shove their way onto the cruise ships parked at Port Miami. They think they've found the way out. They think they're saved. Modern cruise ships aren't sailboats. You can't just drift away. They're floating hotels that demand fuel, port equipment, and constant deliveries to function at all. Take those away and they're just steel boxes. By day 18, those ships have become floating prisons. No fuel, no food coming in, toilets backing up into the hallways, 95-degree heat and zero air conditioning inside a metal hull. From the top decks, passengers stare at the shoreline. And down there, armed groups wait for anyone desperate enough to swim back in. So, the people who thought they'd escaped are now sealed in a hot metal coffin. Surrounded by ocean, they can't even drink. That's the trap. Meanwhile, the mainland does its own thing. Miami-Dade is reclaimed swamp. It only stays dry because electric pumps run around the clock. Cut the power and the ground remembers what it used to be. Wet. Streets start pooling. And inside 2 weeks, the mosquitoes go absolutely biblical. Thick clouds of them. And they're carrying dengue. Then Zika behind it. Disease you can't outrun. By day 20, South Florida is a checkerboard of ethnic fortresses, each one speaking a different language. None of them answering to any outside authority, because no authority can even reach them across the flooded ruins in between. Here's an extra piece worth hammering. Florida's population skews old. A huge share of residents are retirees. In a collapse, that's the most vulnerable group there is. No mobility, chronic conditions, and reliance on services that vanish overnight. And the barrier islands are their own death trap. Places like Miami Beach connect to the mainland by a handful of bridges and causeways. Block those, and thousands of people are stranded on a sandbar with no fresh water at all. There's also the reptile problem nobody plans for. The Everglades is full of alligators and invasive pythons. When the water rises and spreads into flooded neighborhoods, those animals move in with it. Now you're not just fighting people, you're sharing the streets with predators. And the heat and humidity stack the odds against you. South Florida doesn't cool off much at night in summer. Without air conditioning, there's no relief, ever. Your body never gets a break. Sleep becomes impossible, and exhausted people make fatal mistakes. The Northeast megalopolis stretches from Boston through New York down to Washington. That's 50 million people packed together with basically no food production of their own. None. It all comes from somewhere else. New York City alone is 8 million people crammed onto an island holding about 24 hours of food at any given moment. Everything arrives by truck, over bridges, and through tunnels. And those become choke points the instant panic sets in. By day 2, every bridge into Manhattan is jammed with dead vehicles. Nothing gets in. Now do the calorie math. 8 million people burning 2,000 calories a day with zero resupply. That's a 16 billion calorie hole. Every single day. You cannot forage your way out of a number that big. The way food disappears is predictable. Every edible thing is gone by day 5. Shelves stripped. Then the body, grinding under constant stress, starts eating itself. Starvation wrecks your thinking inside 10 days. Your immune system just switches off. Picture a pharmacist in Brooklyn. She rationed insulin carefully through the first week. On day 13, she runs completely dry. And she knows exactly who dies now and in what order because she already did the math in her head. Then day 14, a father walks in. His 7-year-old is slipping into a coma. He's got a gun and he's demanding insulin that simply does not exist anymore. And she can't explain scarcity to a man watching his kid die. There's nothing to say. The gunshot rings out through a neighborhood with no police left to even investigate. The NYPD stopped functioning 5 days back. Do the ratio. 36,000 officers for 8 million people. You can't hold order at that number when everyone's starving and cops are choosing between the badge and their own dying families. Most of them pick family. Of course they do. So by day 22, what's left is armed crews holding key infrastructure, ex-cops running survival pockets, and lawless zones where the only rule is who's stronger. Boston, Philly, Baltimore, DC. They all topple one after another because they all lean on the same fatal assumption. That food, water, and order are just permanent facts of life. They're not. They never were. Let me add something about the tunnels here. New York doesn't just depend on bridges. The subway system sits below the water table and stays dry only because pumps run non-stop. Kill the power and the tunnels flood within days. A whole layer of the city drowns, and the high-rises become vertical traps. When the elevators die, a 40-story apartment tower turns into a nightmare. Elderly and disabled residents get stranded up top. Water pressure can't reach the upper floors anyway. People are trapped in the sky. DC adds its own wrinkle. It's a government town, but government runs on the same grid as everyone else. When the institutions that people expect to save them are themselves collapsing, the psychological hit lands even harder. The symbol of order becomes just another dark building. There's also a winter problem the other regions don't have. Collapse in a Northeast January is a different beast entirely. Now, you're not just starving, you're freezing. Heating systems die with the grid. And in a city, there's nothing to burn and nowhere warm to hide. And the sheer density works against everyone. Millions of people stacked in apartment towers with no way to spread out. There's no land to farm, no yard to dig a well. When the supply trucks stop, there is literally no local fallback. The city was never self-sufficient for a single day. Quick pause. If any of this is landing, do me a favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me which region you're closest to. And subscribe because the stuff coming up gets even heavier. Alright, back to it. The Gulf Coast Petrochemical Crescent. If you want to watch industrial civilization actively turn on the people who built it, look at the Gulf Coast Petrochemical Crescent. That's Houston through Beaumont down to New Orleans. This region doesn't go ungovernable through scarcity. It goes uninhabitable through chemistry. We're talking hundreds of facilities. Refining oil, cracking gas, cooking up plastics, storing the toxins in quantities your brain can't even picture. And every one of them needs active management every single hour of every day. Cooling systems, pressure relief, automated shutdowns that all depend on outside power. When the workers stop showing up and the grid goes dark, you've got maybe 72 hours before things start failing catastrophically. The clock is short. It kicks off with fires. A pump overheats, a vessel loses containment. By day 5, multiple uncontrolled chemical fires are burning across a 100-mile stretch, and each one is pumping toxins into the air, turning the sky itself into poison. The smoke isn't really smoke. It's aerosolized chemistry that shreds lung tissue on contact. People 15 miles downwind are coughing up blood, and they don't even know why yet. Then it rains. And when rain falls through those toxic plumes, it turns to acid. It burns skin. It poisons every open water source it touches. There's nowhere clean to run. Picture a refinery worker in Texas City watching from 15 miles out. His plant has become a pillar of fire, burning in colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Chemical greens, deep purples, electric blues. Colors that mean something has gone very wrong. That smoke plume drifts straight over Houston. Over neighborhoods where 2 million people are sheltering, because they've got absolutely nowhere else to go. By day 9, mass chemical exposure is causing neurological damage, respiratory failure, and skin lesions, just from breathing. And here's the gut punch. There is no treatment for citywide multi-chemical poisoning. It's not a thing. Hospitals can't fix an entire poisoned metro area. There's no antidote for the air. New Orleans does something different. It floods slowly without its pumps. Not from a hurricane, just from ordinary rain and the constant pressure of the Mississippi pushing in. The water rises quietly. And the water is filthy. It's mixing with industrial runoff, petrochemical waste, and raw sewage from failed treatment plants. By day 14, half the city sits under toxic sludge. Survivors on high ground are stranded on little islands in a poisoned sea. There's no governing that. There's no territory left to govern. The environment itself has become chemically incompatible with human life. You can't police a place that's actively trying to dissolve you. Let me tack on a hard truth here. These plants don't fail politely. Some of them store chemicals that go airborne and travel for miles as invisible clouds. A single major release can force evacuation of an entire county. Now imagine dozens failing at once with nobody left to sound an alarm. And the shipping channels make it worse. The Houston ship channel is packed with tankers full of volatile cargo. In a collapse, those become floating bombs with no crews managing them. One fire spreads to the next. It cascades down the waterway. There's also the simple fact that this region has nowhere good to flee to. North is more sprawl. The coast is water. The heat and humidity mean walking out is deadly, same as Florida. People are boxed in by their own geography while the air turns against them. And the contamination doesn't clear. Even if the fires burn out, the ground and water stay poisoned for a long time. This isn't a place you wait out for a few weeks and then return to. Some of these zones become no-go areas that stay dangerous long after the flames die down. One more layer. This region also sits in hurricane country. Now imagine a collapse in August or September, with a storm rolling in and no warning systems, no evacuation, no rescue. The compounding disasters stack on top of each other. Nature and chemistry team up against you. The Pacific Northwest looks rock solid on the surface. Progressive cities, educated people, strong civic culture, everyone recycles. It seems like the last place that would come apart. That's exactly why it's dangerous. Because this region has a fracture line that's been sitting quiet for decades, just waiting to crack open. The Cascade Mountains split it into two worlds that don't mix. The wet, crowded I-5 corridor on one side, the dry farming interior on the other. In a collapse, that becomes a civil war. Seattle and Portland together hold over 5 million people, almost no food production, and water systems that depend entirely on electric pumps. When the power dies, these cities hit a freshwater crisis inside a week. And yes, that's despite all the rain. Because rain isn't water you can drink. Not without collection and filtration infrastructure. All that rainfall is useless if you can't capture and clean it. The irony is brutal. Surrounded by water, dying of thirst. Picture a tech worker in Fremont. Spent his whole career optimizing systems, making things efficient. On day 11, he watches his neighbor get shot over a rain barrel. And his entire model of reality just collapses in real time. Everything he believed, that experts have plans, that institutions hold, that every problem has a clean solution, all of it becomes useless in an instant. His framework was never built for this. By day 9, the refugee wave starts. Hundreds of thousands trying to push east over the mountain passes, heading for the farming valleys. Except those valleys can't hold that many people. Not even close. So the roadblocks go up. Every pass gets barricaded by armed locals doing their own math. Picture an organic farmer outside Yakima. Spent 20 years selling at Seattle farmers markets. Now he's standing on Highway 2 turning back refugees he actually recognizes. Friends. Regular customers. And he's telling them the truth. His valley can feed maybe 30,000 people without industrial inputs. Not one more. That's the ceiling and everyone above it doesn't eat. This isn't cruelty. It's carrying capacity, enforced at gunpoint. That's a very different thing. But the people getting turned back have nowhere left to go. They're stuck between a dead city and a full valley. So, by day 16, they come back. Armed this time. And the mountain passes turn into war zones. The illusion of order shatters, and by then, it's way too late for any organized defense. What forms up is chaos. Neighborhood strongholds. Some ideological, some just opportunistic. None of them coordinated with each other. By day 23, the Pacific Northwest is two hostile territories split down the middle by a wall of mountains. East versus west. And neither side is coming to help the other. Here's an extra layer. The region's dams are its lifeline and its liability. All that hydroelectric power needs operators. When the grid fails and the dams go unmanaged, you don't just lose power. You risk downstream flooding that wipes out the very valleys people are fleeing toward. And the ports add a wild card. Seattle and Portland are major shipping hubs. In a collapse, they become targets. Whoever controls a working port controls a choke point for whatever trade survives. That's worth fighting over, and people will. There's also the wildfire factor. The dry interior burns every summer as it is. Now remove every firefighter and every water bomber. A single spark can wipe out the exact farmland the refugees are fighting to reach. The prize can vanish overnight. And the rain that defines this place cuts both ways. Constant damp means constant cold and constant rot. Wet clothes never dry. Wounds get infected. Mold takes over shelter. That relentless moisture wears people down slowly, in ways the desert regions never deal with. California's Central Valley. Now California's Central Valley. This is the one that genuinely breaks people's minds, because you starve to death surrounded by an ocean of food you cannot eat. Read that again. Surrounded by food, and you starve anyway. This region grows a quarter of America's food, but it's industrial monoculture built for export and factory processing. It was never designed to feed the people standing in it. That's the whole problem. Think about it. 200,000 acres of almonds that need industrial processing before anyone can use them. Tomatoes bred to be picked by machines, not hands. Cotton, which you can't eat at all. And the actual calorie staples? Wheat, corn, rice? Those get grown for animal feed or shipped straight out the moment they're harvested. They don't stay. So you've got 7 million residents standing in the middle of agriculture they can't touch without factories that no longer run. Then the water stops. The entire valley is irrigated by canals and pumps hauling water uphill using enormous amounts of electricity. Cut the power and irrigation dies overnight. The San Joaquin Valley starts turning back into the desert it always wanted to be. By day 7, the farm workforce makes its calculation. Stay and guard crops you don't even own? Or go find water for your own family? Most leave. Of course they leave. Wouldn't you? By day 13, the fields sit abandoned. Crops rotting in place or getting stripped by foraging parties who have no idea how to actually harvest efficiently. They waste more than they take. The food just spoils in the sun. The grain silos in Fresno and Bakersfield turn into fortresses. Picture the silo manager in Fresno standing on a catwalk above 100,000 bushels of wheat. He's watching armed groups probe his perimeter, looking for a weak spot. He's got maybe a dozen people inside with him. Workers who stayed. Family. A few cops who understood the math early. And that wheat? It's 6 months of calories for 1,000 people. Or 6 weeks for 10,000. Everyone within 50 miles knows it's sitting there. By day 17, the first real assault comes. 200 starving people who've decided that dying while trying to take the silo beats dying slow in the street. The defenders hold. But 3 of them are dead now. And everybody inside knows the next group will be bigger. The small cities fracture along gang lines that were invisible during normal times. By day 22, the Central Valley is a scattered patchwork of farm compounds and grain fortresses. The state government has zero capacity to step in. The valley isn't governed, it's abandoned. Let me add a cruel detail. A lot of the valley's water is locked underground, and pulling it up requires deep electric wells. Even the groundwater is out of reach without power. So the one backup source people assume they have is gone too. And the heat closes the trap. The Central Valley bakes in summer, easily over 100 degrees for weeks. Same physiology problem as Phoenix. No power means no cooling, means bodies breaking down. Food you can't eat and heat you can't escape. There's a livestock angle too. The valley holds millions of cattle and chickens in industrial feedlots. Those animals depend on trucked-in feed and pumped water. When that stops, they die fast. And millions of rotting carcasses in the heat become a disease bomb all on their own. One more brutal detail. The valley's air is already some of the worst in the country, trapped by the surrounding mountains. Add uncontrolled fires and rotting crops and dead livestock, and the air itself turns hostile. There's nowhere for the bad air to go. It just sits and poisons everyone. All right, second checkpoint. If you're still with me, smash that like button and let me know in the comments if I missed a region you think belongs on this list. And subscribe if you haven't. The last part ties it all together. Let's finish this. What ties them together? So here's the thread running through all 6 of these regions. Every one of them blows past its natural carrying capacity by huge multiples, orders of magnitude. And they only stay in that impossible state because of systems so complex that when they break, there's no soft landing. The population doesn't just shrink, it crashes. Through starvation, disease, violence, and people running for their lives. And governing becomes flat out impossible because government needs 3 things to work: resources, communication, and belief. That last one matters most. The belief that the system can actually deliver safety and justice. That's the glue. And when that belief dies, and it dies inside 2 weeks in these places, you're left with land that exists on a map but can't be controlled on the ground. Lines on paper mean nothing. The timeline runs like a cascade. 3 days for the supply chains to empty out. 7 for the water systems to fail. 10 for medical infrastructure to fall apart, 14 for law enforcement to fragment, 21 for people to psychologically accept that help is never coming. If you live in one of these 6 regions, the choice you make on day 2 decides whether you're breathing on day 30. That's the whole game. It comes down to one early decision, made before things look bad. And here's the hardest truth in all of this. The right move is almost always to leave early, before the highways clog, before the violence starts, before the resources vanish. Get out while getting out is still possible, but leaving means accepting that the collapse is real and permanent. And most people simply can't make that jump until it's already too late. Their brain won't let them. It fights the idea the whole way down. Here's the cruel irony. The people most capable of holding things together, the professionals, the planners, the civic-minded folks, they're the ones most invested in believing the system can be saved. So they stay. They try to fix it. And by the time they accept it can't be fixed, they've already burned the window to save themselves. Let me add a few more patterns worth knowing because they show up everywhere. First, communication dies faster than people expect. Cell towers have backup batteries that last hours, not days. Once those drain, you're blind. No news, no coordination, no way to reach family. And that information blackout accelerates the panic. People fill the silence with the worst assumptions. Second, the second wave of death is disease, not violence. Once sanitation fails, cholera, dysentery, and other waterborne illness move through packed populations fast. No clean water, no working sewers, no antibiotics. In dense cities, this can kill more people than the fighting ever does. Third, watch the psychology of the crowd. People don't turn violent immediately. There's a window, usually the first few days, where folks are still polite, still cooperative, still expecting rescue. Then the switch flips. And it flips for everyone at roughly the same time, which is what makes it so dangerous. Fourth, the suburbs are a false comfort. People assume being outside the city center makes them safe. But suburbs have no food production either, and they're strung along the same dead supply lines. They just take a few extra days to feel it. Same outcome, slight delay. Fifth, don't count on official help. Emergency services are sized for isolated disasters, not systemic collapse. A city's worth of ambulances can handle a bad night, not a dead grid. When everything fails at once, the responders are victims too. They go home to their own families, exactly like the cops do. Now let me say something about the people who survive, because it's not who you'd guess. It's rarely the strongest or the best armed. It's the ones who accepted reality fastest. The ones who made the hard call early while it still felt like an overreaction. Clarity beats strength here, and it's the ones who thought about water before food. You can go weeks without eating. You die in days without water. The survivors are the people who figured out their water source on day 1, not day 10. That single priority separates the living from the dead. It's also the ones who stayed quiet. The loud ones, the people who let everyone know they had supplies, they got targeted first. Gray, invisible, unremarkable. That's what keeps you alive when strength becomes law and everyone's desperate. And it's the ones with a network. Nobody survives alone for long. A single person has to sleep, and sleep is when you're vulnerable. Small trusted groups take shifts, share the load, and watch each other's backs. The lone wolf fantasy gets people killed fast. Let me hit a couple more region-wide patterns because they show up in all 6. Cash and cards die together. The moment the grid fails, digital money is gone. And paper cash loses its meaning within days because nobody trusts it when there's nothing to buy. What matters is physical goods. Water, food, medicine, fuel. That becomes the only real currency left. Fuel disappears faster than food. People forget this. Every generator, every car, every pump needs it. And it can't be pumped from stations without power. Whatever's in your tank on day 1 is roughly all you'll ever have. There's no refill coming. Kids and the elderly define your choices. If you're responsible for either, your whole calculus changes. You move slower. You need more. And the hard decisions about when to leave get infinitely harder when you're carrying people who can't carry themselves. Plan for that now, not later. And here's a pattern people hate hearing. Location beats preparation. You can stockpile all you want. But if you're in the dead center of one of these 6 regions, no amount of canned food saves you from 5 million desperate neighbors. Geography is destiny in a collapse. Where you are matters more than what you have. Picture yourself on day 29. You're standing in whatever's left of your neighborhood, and you're watching your neighbors, people you've known for years, walk past your house in groups, armed, not making eye contact with anyone, just moving. And you're thinking back to that conversation with your spouse on day 2, the one where you both agreed the government would handle it, that things would get back to normal, that leaving would have been a crazy overreaction. You remember that talk vividly now? You're thinking about your kids and how they asked why you didn't listen to that friend who left on day 3, the one you called paranoid, the one you low-key made fun of. He's gone. He's somewhere safe. And you're here. You're thinking about how you spent 20 years being the reasonable one, the one who trusted institutions, who believed in continuity, in the way things always were. And now you're learning the worst lesson of your life. Being reasonable was the single most dangerous thing you could have been. The map doesn't lie. The math doesn't lie. And in the places where they crash together into impossible equations, the window to leave slams shut faster than the human mind can even accept that it was ever open in the first place. That's the real trap. Not the heat, not the water, not the violence. It's the delay. It's the part of you that insists things will be fine right up until the moment they very clearly aren't. That voice costs more lives than anything else on this list. So if you take one thing away, take this. Know your region, know its fatal flaw, know your water source.